online marketing team as well. Rizal, just in time. We're just getting started with the introductions. So I'll introduce this now for everybody who's maybe watching this online. So today we have a guest speaker. His name is Adam Chronister. Yeah, if I've pronounced it correctly. Okay, so Adam comes from. We basically looked at Adam's LinkedIn. We saw that he previously worked with Stay Alfred, and as I understand, Stay Alfred is no longer there. But Adam has had a long career actually in digital marketing and also in search engine optimization. So as part of our mentorship series, we decided to reach out to Adam to speak more about how to think broadly and think strategically about search engine optimization, but also about how to plan digital marketing strategy, because we understand that you've been doing that type of work at a director level. And the primary purpose of making these recordings is, one, I think to gain a little bit more exposure to Adam's work, but also we also share a lot of this back to university students in Indonesia who are looking to learn more about how to gain jobs and traction in the digital economy. So hopefully we can make you a rock star here in Indonesia, Adam. And
yeah, I'm down for that. Yeah, I love doing this kind of stuff. So this last 2 months I've been doing a lot of different webinars. Some smaller. Literally was on one the other day. I think it was 2 people, and then I've been on one with thousands of people or close to 1,000 people. So. I don't discriminate when it comes to audiences. It's good to share this stuff. So.
Okay, perfect. So our team has prepared a list of questions, and of course during the discussion we'll probably have other questions. I'm going to pass it over to Aldo. Oh wait, sorry. Let me allow my team to introduce themselves first.
Yeah, that'd be great.
There's Aldo and there's Rizal, and I'll go to Rizal first because then Aldo can go right away into the question session. All right, Rizal. Adam's here. Let's have you introduce yourself.
Hello, Adam. Good morning from Yogyakarta. My name is Rizal, and currently I am at digital marketing team on Bukit Vista. And yeah, I also working on Facebook ads and website migration from previously from Strikingly to WordPress right now. And yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, same here.
Okay,
very good.
Let's go over next to Aldo then. Thank you very much, Rizal.
Okay, good morning, Adam. My name is Aldo. I'm here from marketing team. I'm doing this professional networking, and also I'm helping the product team to design the interface. So yeah. So first of all, I think I want to say thank you for your willingness to come and discuss with us about this digital marketing. And the reason why we call you is because, like Jing said, and because you're working, you're having this background of director of digital marketing, and also Stay Alfred and Bukit Vista were working at the same industry, virtual rental.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah, and I think that's great, and we might have the same direction of thinking. So so the format will be, I have this bunch of questions, but everyone can freely ask anything. Like, it's just a casual discussion. If you want to ask us too, it's okay. It's just ask us like that. And
perfect. Yeah.
And I think my first and opening question is, how was the digital marketing scope that you're working at Stay Alfred, and like what is your focus audience in Stay Alfred? Are you focusing on this supply side or more of a demand side?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The time I spent at Stay Alfred was man, it was a lot of fun, and it sounds like Jing hinted on. Fortunately, the company, much like most of their competitors, virtually all of Stay Alfred's competitors, minus one, were actually out of business probably a month before Stay Alfred. I still have a lot of good friends that are there that are working on kind of the dissolvement of the company. So that's unfortunately bittersweet. I've had some other opportunities come up since then, but I will definitely miss the opportunity there. But a lot of what I focused on there did kind of range. So I was there roughly 4 years. I started out really being almost a overall director, in that there was not a very big marketing team when I started. By the time we ended, our marketing team grew significantly to the point where it was like having our own small little marketing agency inside a larger company, which was something I really enjoyed, because at that point I didn't have to wear so many hats. Obviously, there's pros and cons to either focusing very narrowly on a specific area of focus, as well as having more of a broad brush responsibility. So towards the end of my time there, a lot of my focus was very heavy on what I would consider kind of my core competency, which is search engine optimization. So I developed a lot of training. I worked closely with our content team, as well as other marketers in our team, to really help structure a lot of our strategy for maximum visibility. So that was kind of towards the end of it. Earlier on, I was kind of helpful and instrumental in kind of getting the wheels turning for our pay-per-click marketing strategy, which we eventually turned over to a third-party agency for support. But before I was on board, there really was not only was there not a great established web presence, but there was really a reluctancy for a lot of what we should be doing as digital marketers. So PPC, SEO, and so I got the opportunity to see the business start out very small and grow quite rapidly. And so that's the kind of environment I love to be in. And so it's exciting. I don't know how many people you have on staff, but I have a feeling that you guys aren't this huge conglomerate yet. But you play your cards right, or you get in front of the right people, and things can grow quite quickly. So.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering that. Talking about this growing team, when is exactly thing like? Okay, I need to upscale my team resources, and when do you think it's the right time to upscaling the team?
I mean, honestly, it always kind of comes down to your budget. So whenever the resources are a necessity, that's when you start scaling. So some of that's going to be dependent on your budget, which of course can be dependent on the market that you're working with. Obviously, you don't want to go hire a huge workforce and have people sitting around, or have more employees than you have revenue coming in. So that's definitely a scenario you want to look at. In the case of Stay Alfred, towards the last number of years, we had investors come in and that were really helping fund growth, and that's really one of the guys I follow. He said something a couple years ago. I heard it was quite interesting. He says, you have to figure out if you're a growth company or a lifestyle company, and there's no right or wrong. With a growth company, it's just about grow, grow, grow. And so with a lifestyle company, it's like, hey, maybe our objective is not to be the next 10-pound gorilla, but we want to create a lifestyle for the people inside of our organization, that everybody can pay their bills, feed their family, enjoy what they do, and continue. So as a business, that's one thing you have to ask yourself. And that was, at least personally, something that was it was an interesting thought for me, because I've worked W-2 jobs. I do some stuff on the side, freelancing. And so I've always asked that question, like, do I want to be, do I want to have a growth lifestyle, or basically just a lifestyle business or a growth business?
Okay. Yeah, I think we agree with that. We decide to focus on whether we're a growth company or a lifestyle company. So talking about the budget things, like let's solve imaginary things, like if you have if you had this $100,000 uh of of money of marketing budget, and you only have these 5 team allocations, how would you
Uh,
achieve the most important how would you achieve the most impactful things for the online marketing?
yeah, that's a good question. I am, I'm still pretty biased when it comes to SEO. But these days you really have to be having a mixed approach. So in a scenario where you have a few people that can focus on certain areas, but you have a healthy budget, I would probably have 3 areas of focus primarily, specific to marketing. I would have somebody that's focused primarily on paid advertising. So that could range from, search, Google search ads, display, social media ads. Somebody else that was focused purely on SEO, and maybe that includes content creation as part of their role, or maybe that's also supplemented elsewhere. And then the other piece would be just the more holistic, like day-to-day administration. So website development, basic online presence and visibility. I don't know enough about the market in Bali. We have done some work with a client there. One thing I do know, in general, markets that are less westernized, a lot of times you can get a lot more traction than more westernized countries when it comes to things like SEO and pay-per-click marketing. I know a lot of people that do like local marketing in markets outside of the U.S. and they just are killing it because the ecosystem is less competitive, both from a business perspective, but also just from a marketing savvy perspective. So I don't know if you guys have seen that there. I mean, I do know Bali is particularly a hot market for vacation. So I'm assuming you guys have at least some competition, but still, outside of the U.S., I feel like there's a lot of opportunities still out there.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's go talking about this SEO strategy that you. I think you're very mastered in this. And I want to ask questions about your strategy at Stay Alfred. How do you define your SEO strategy at Stay Alfred, sir?
Yeah. So the one thing I will do, and it's probably too much for like this period of time, but I actually just got done doing a webinar for a company called SE Ranking. Yeah, I don't think they published it yet, but when they do, I will send it to you guys.
Great.
And what is in that webinar is literally it's basically the entire training process that I built for the team at Stay Alfred. Have since published it. And it really what I did a lot there towards the end was working with our content writers to teach them how to write for the web or how to write for SEO. So in that webinar, I basically, unlocked the keys to the kingdom for what I was able to instill in our team at Stay Alfred to get us where we were. To give you some perspective, when I started there, we were bringing in about $1,000 a month in organic attributed revenue. Last February, we surpassed $1 million in organic revenue. So that's 1,000 plus return. I mean, it took 4 years to get there, but that's a testament to what SEO can do. The biggest challenge when it comes to SEO is just time, and that's what I see a lot of businesses struggle with. Is they need leads quickly and right away, and so it's easy to go into channels like Google AdWords or display advertising or Facebook ads, which are important. They do have their place, but again, it's a higher cost lead source. So in the short term, for businesses that have budget, I say get your paid advertisement programs in place, get them optimized, and then really start doing the slow and steady, tried and true work of creating valuable content, making sure that's backed by research that's going to put you out there. And you do that for 24 plus months. Eventually you're going to get traction. So yeah, I'll make sure I send you guys a copy of that, because again, it really breaks out all of our strategy, and I think you'll find that helpful. So do you guys have writers on staff, like for blog posts and content, or do you work with outside teams? Like what's your content structure like right now?
Over to Jing, maybe you want to answer?
Okay, thank you for that, Aldo. So to answer your question, Adam, so we were entirely focused on content before. So Airbnb was our primary distribution channel. In fact, we got about close to 97% of our business solely through Airbnb. So during that phase of the company, we produced photography, infographics, titles, descriptions, written content, and all of that was pretty much just on Airbnb. So there was, in fact, the entire team that we call marketing now used to just be called content, because that was their own focus. There was a little bit of work being done on acquiring employees through production of videos and vlogs and stuff on YouTube. And then there was some work also being done on LinkedIn for the same purpose. And there was also some content production to acquire partnerships as well. So I would say our content, sort of 80% of the content was being posted on Airbnb to create listings. The other percentages were split on Instagram, I think, and LinkedIn, YouTube, for sort of like actually community building around employee communities and also property owner communities, and Facebook as well. So and copywriting, I think, was one of the things that I don't think we're perfect at copywriting. I think there's a lot of improvement that we can do. But it was one of the things that we rehearsed regularly. We used to have copy writing as a guild in this company.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a lot of emphasis on content production.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and what we found is having really good data, keyword research, knowing what the competitive threshold is for the content that you write. That's really probably the biggest challenge when it comes to content, because it's easy to have a piece of content in mind that you might think people are interested in, or maybe they're even interested in it, but then you have questions like, well, how long should this piece of copy be? Should it be 500 words? Should it be 5,000 words? And so being able to understand where the content competitive bar is being set is really one of those things that can be advantageous, and that's a lot of what the kind of my webinar and my training was all about. Some other tools that I can recommend too, as it relates to that whole scenario, there's two really good ones. They do essentially the same thing. One is called Page Optimizer Pro, and the other is called Surfer SEO. Either one of those tools can be a really good arsenal to put in your toolbox when it comes to figuring out how to beat the competition with organic SEO-based content.
Adam, really quickly, could I ask for that? The second tool is Surfer SEO?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Aldo, if I may, I'd like to plug a question here. This is really fascinating because yesterday we were having a talk with so the overall size of the company at Bukit Vista at this point is, I believe, around 18. At peak, we're close to 30. But now with actually interns, it's a little bit bigger. It's probably close to maybe 23. So was talking to our data science team, it's 2 people, and the insight we got actually having another discussion with another professional was that data science is about, they said the same thing. Before even the sexy stuff in data science, like the modeling and the learning and all that, it's about 80% of it is just cleaning your data. It's just making sure that you have a very pure and really well-processed data so that the models can learn from it. So I'm actually kind of seeing correlations across even different disciplines, different areas of expertise, and
100%.
so
Yeah.
it seems to me that this idea of doing your keyword research, and just really making sure that you're writing the right topic, and the dimensions of what you're going to build, that's where most of the effort should be placed. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. And whether you're looking at things like lead generation or marketing, it's like super important to have that data. I mean, data is the new gold. I mean, really, if you peel back the onion of every top business today, whether it's Amazon, Google, Facebook, the real commodity is data. And so absolutely, like I'm a hardcore advocate for making sure that anything I do is data driven. And that goes, I mean, that goes down from, from what I do on a professional perspective in marketing to some of my own passions and hobbies around, investing, say, in the stock market or in real estate. I want to make sure that I have the best data before I go out and make a decision, on, say, just a gut feeling or something like that. So,
And, and if I may ask another follow-up question, because it seems like there's a lot of weight here. Um,
mhm.
what are the factors that you consider in, let's say, your content? Like you mentioned just earlier, how long it should be, what kind of topic. Are there any other, like I never thought of length as actually relevant to creating a good piece of content. But are there other dimensions that we need to analyze? And then I guess the follow-up question is, how does the data show you specifically how to then architect those dimensions?
Yeah, and I go I go into this quite a bit in that webinar. So, but I'll give you a preview. And length is the only reason length is important is that it can broaden essentially the semantic map. So Google bases a lot of how they rank stuff off of like a semantic range. Sometimes this is called LSI, which stands for latent semantic indexing. There's other terms that, but at the end of the day, it's just synonyms that have correlation. And so it's not about a certain length necessarily, but where you figure out how broad a piece of content should be is based off of who is already ranking in that top spot. There's an application. Let me look it up here. I think it's just called Through. I forget the actual URL, but it's mentioned in there, and this is also what those two other tools offer as well. But basically, what we want to do is, let's say that we're trying to rank for a particular keyword, right? So we know based off of that, especially if we've done the search volume and we say, hey, this term has, pretty healthy search. So we know we want to go after this primary keyword. Then the next step is to figure out, okay, who is my competition? If I'm David, who are the Goliaths? So of course, the best way to do that is you go to Google and say, okay, the top 10 ranking competitors for my target term are X. Now, and you can do all this manually, but there are tools that help with it. But now I'm going to go through and I'm going to look at those top 10 competitors and I'm going to say, okay, what's the word count on all 10 of those pages?
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so then I'm going to say, what's the average word count? Okay, the average word count for all 10 of these pages is 1,342 words. So I'm going to try to do a blog post that's 1,400 words. And also the keyword usage, the primary keyword usage is used on average of 3 times on these top 10 competitors. And what we're doing through this exercise is we're essentially backwards engineering the search engines. Google doesn't tell you how the search engines work outside of what's already in search, which you can then analyze, backwards engineer, and use that data to inform your content strategy.
I get it. That's brilliant. Okay, so you're looking at what success is, and then you're looking at the dimensions of what success looks like, and then essentially copying that. But then
you're using that data as a template for your target.
Got it. Okay, got it.
So, and that's really what I love about digital marketing is, old school marketing was kind of like throwing darts at a dartboard. You hope that you get a bullseye. Where today, there's so much data, like you don't have to guess. You still have to put the work in, but there's very little guessing as to like, hey, if I do this, does it have a potential of Y or X? And so that's the biggest thing I see, is a lot of companies are doing things because they've been told, or they read a blog post that says, oh, you need to write a blog post, once a week. Well, it's like, why? Who said? One of the guys that I follow, a guy named Brian Dean, he built he's pretty well known in the digital marketing world, but he built his entire business, I think, off of like 12 blog posts. But if you take a look at his blog posts, they're huge. Like nobody can even compete because he puts more effort into that. So one of the things I tell people is like, instead of just writing 3 blog posts, why not write 1 blog post that has the content depth of 3 blog posts? And then your 1 blog post, which is maybe it's 3,000 words, or maybe it's 5,000 words. And again, it's not only about word count, it's about that competitive nature. But if you set the bar so high that nobody is, willing to compete, like you're going to win that spot. And so that's where the data becomes helpful, because you can figure out if something's too big to bite off, or if you say, hey, we could do that. This is only going to take a 2,000 word article, and we'll write it bigger and better. Like we're up for the challenge.
I get it. So it's actually the data helps you prioritize. It helps you understand.
Exactly.
And okay,
It
cool.
helps you to know where you're going too. So you're not just flying blind and saying, well, we hope that if we spend, an hour or 2 writing this blog post, we hope that it will work. Right. And that's 90% of what people are doing. They're writing stuff with no clue as to, and it could be a fantastic piece of content, but the best piece of content is worthless if nobody sees it. So,
absolutely,
that's kind of where I get excited is figuring out how to prioritize some of those pieces.
Got it. And if Aldo, just one more question. Adam, if you're, let's say, going to write like a new type of article, let's say, I remember a while ago there was this idea, because I think not Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones was nearing the finale, right? I think Rizal was involved in this. And then we thought, hey, we'll write a blog post comparing like Game of Thrones locations to Bali locations, right? So there was that idea where you're inventing kind of a new type of blog post that there really is no, I guess, comparison to, right? And the hope of it was that I don't think it was actually very successful. I saw it published, and I didn't see very many engagements with it as what we had hoped. But if you're writing something just really brand new, should you expect it to actually do well, or is there any way to reverse engineer something that has not been done before?
Yeah, so I guess how I would answer that is, one, it's a great idea, and I think it's creative, and that's the kind of stuff that once you get somebody to that piece of content, they're going to stick around longer, which is part of Google's whole algorithm is engagement.
Okay.
But again, it's a chicken and egg, so you got to get the traffic, and then you can work on engagement. So the other thing to think about is you really have to get to the basics of what is Google. Google and other search engines, all they are question and answer machines. And so you need to project yourself into your potential customer and say, okay, what would if I was my customer, and I was maybe looking at ideas for vacations in Bali, what would I search for? So I'm going to search for best places to visit in Bali. We had one client in Bali, and they were really close to a beach spot. So we wrote an article on the best beach spots or the best surfing spots in Bali, because there are people out there that go to Bali and say, "Hey, I'm a surfer and I'm heading to Bali next year. I wonder what the best surf spots are." And then, and so you want to ask. You want to understand what the question is, and then you want your piece of content to be the best answer to that question. And so there is probably a way, you could insert some kind of semantics into that article. You'd probably just have to be creative. So it's not that you have to steer outside of that creative aspect. And that was one challenge that I've typically had with writers is, writers by default are very creative. They want to write cool stuff like comparing Bali to Lord of the Rings. But I always have to instill like that's great, and keep that passion. But also, I always had to kind of beat into the writers like, what answer or solution are we answering? Or what question are we answering? And so, and maybe it's something like most what's the best or the most beautiful places in Bali, and then maybe the article is like beautiful places in Bali that will remind you, or that will make you feel like you're in a movie. Like that's kind of how I would take that article, because again, you're answering the question, but then you're weaving in your creativity.
Right, you're packaging it and you're creating the correct container around it so it moves through the algorithm in the best way. Okay, understood. Okay, back up to Aldo, actually. I think it's a good time to drill into algorithms, maybe.
I want to ask about this algorithm. Like, what do you think is your prioritizing on this Google algorithm? What in your opinion is the best focus on this Google algorithm metrics?
The algorithms are always going to be challenging because they're always changing. And so what worked yesterday may not work tomorrow, which again is why understanding the data and backwards engineering what is already working it's one of the only things that is never going to be hidden by Google. You know what I mean? They can change all these other metrics, but at the end of the day, you're always going to be able to analyze what's already working. So when it comes to those kind of things, like, again, one of the best things you can do is identify what's already working in the sector that you're looking at. Now, there are tools out there that will show you, like, okay, for this keyword or that keyword, here's the search volume. So, whether you're using Google's own tools, you're using something like SEMrush or, some of the other tools out there, you can extract that data that way. As we mentioned already, you can examine the search engines in general for a certain term and figure out who's already ranking. And I guarantee you that the top 10 ranking positions for a certain term will probably not be the same next year. So it's like the saying goes, SEO is never done. And I'm sure you guys, with what you're doing, you probably see shifts in rankings, but that's where you go back and say, okay, why aren't we ranking as high as we were 2 months ago? And then you go back and you examine kind of the data and figure out, like, okay, why is this competitor beating me when before I was beating them? Like, what's different? So when it comes to algorithms, I don't get overly hung up on trying to analyze the latest algorithm. There are. I mean, you could spend hours and days reading blog posts about people examining the latest algorithm, and that's going to be helpful. It's important to get a sense of what's going on, but I don't lose sleep over it because, again, at the end of the day, I can always go and see what is working and try to backwards engineer that for my own strategies.
Okay, cool.
Some of the other things, though, that are kind of, tried and true, but again, they kind of seem to fluctuate over time. Backlinks. Backlinks is one of those things that's kind of debated, but you can get about 80 to 90% of the way there with really well structured content. But I'm still a big proponent of links, and so in my opinion, if you create a really good structured piece of content and it has no links, it's going to do even better if it has some nice link authority coming into it,
Crazy. Okay. Oh, I've got a question. Aldo, I just thought of something. Something that we saw recently. This was actually not even with blog posts. This was with YouTube videos, and I think Rizal saw this too. Was that I think it actually relates to that idea of chicken and the egg. How do you get your content ranked if nobody sees it? Would you say it could be a good strategy to have a hybrid sort of ad boosted SEO strategy? So before you actually, I've noticed on our YouTube videos that get the most organic views are the ones that we had originally put some ads behind, and they got a ton of views. And then afterwards, they did pretty well, right? They got seen quite a lot. Is that?
I can tell you why that's happening.
Okay.
So speaking of algorithms, and this is similar. This is a similar functionality across a lot of Google properties. So Google My Business listings, YouTube videos, and even to some extent search rankings and results. And I guess to boil it down, it comes down to engagement signals. So what you're probably seeing is by throwing ads at those YouTube videos, you're shortcutting engagement. Now there are platforms, and this is a little bit more on probably the black hat side of things, but it gives you a good idea of how things work. I have worked on projects and done some case studies where we'll actually have traffic generated. So we'll use like a resource like Micro Workers. Sometimes you can use like Mechanical Turk and have people do micro actions like, hey, go on my video or do a search for this term that pulls up my video, click on the video, watch it for 30 seconds.
I get it.
And then you replicate that across 100 people, 200 people, and I mean you'll rank overnight for that kind of stuff. Now again, that's kind of a gray area, but at the same time, the reason it works is because the metric that Google's looking at is engagement. So that's they're looking at and measuring that engagement and saying, hey, this video is engaging. Another trick when it comes to Google or YouTube rather is trying to get engagement early on. So what I would recommend, whether you have a small staff or a big staff, is as soon as you publish a YouTube video, share it with friends and family. Go, hey, check out this video. Just and so the earlier you can get that engagement, typically the more that those signals are going to start churning, and the momentum will often improve from there.
I have. Oh wow, sorry, Aldo. I got another thought. I have actually an exact case of that, sir, and it was on LinkedIn. So as I said, we put recognition posts for people who are mentoring us, and this was really interesting. There was this one gentleman who was from Cairo. He used to work at Uber in customer support. So it was actually fascinating. The post went kind of viral. It got to about what I consider viral, right? I mean, it was like 100 likes within a week, and I noticed why it happened was it started snowballing really quickly. As soon as I posted it, I think this guy I think knew what was going to happen. Actually, I felt like he knew the underlying. I think he shared it with his friends, and a ton of them started getting in. And then I noticed first it was his friends started getting engaged, and then the next year was people at Uber started getting engaged, and then after a while it was like my network started getting engaged. And then the network that I hadn't spoke to start getting engaged. It was really fascinating as I kind of plotted out all the people who started liking it. And
well, and the reason that part of the rationale, if you're thinking like Google or YouTube, why is that behavior beneficial for them? Well, if I'm just an average consumer and I'm watching YouTube videos, I want to be entertained and I want to be engaged. And so what they're going to do is they're going to promote the videos that have the most engagement early on. So just by that early boost, you get emphasized, because they're saying, oh wow, this video just came out, it's already getting engagement. We're going to elevate it until the point where that engagement starts dropping off, and then it's going to start shifting. So just like everyone else, they're responsible for their shareholders to create an experience that is sticky, that it keeps people engaged. So the more that you can work into their existing ecosystem, whether it's search, whether it's YouTube, other channels, the better you're going to be. So while there are still tactics to kind of take advantage of loopholes and stuff like that, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is understand how these algorithms work and make our systems mold into that platform so that we come out as beneficiaries.
Thank you very much. Back to Aldo.
Okay, I think I'm going back to the ones you said with instead of creating 3 blog posts with different topics, you're just gonna write 1 blog post with that 3 topics. My question is, isn't it going to make that the keywords that we're focusing on, like a keyword mash, like something that you can really focus on, or what is your opinion about that?
So I'm not sure if I understand the question 100%. Rephrase that again.
So
what's the concern there?
I mean, like when you're creating this 1 blog post with 3 topics, so you're using this many keyword text.
I see what you're saying. No, so I think you misunderstood. So I'm not saying create 1 blog post with 3 topics. What I'm saying is, so the blog post would still be 1 topic. What I'm saying is, sometimes you have to ask yourself if the effort required to write 3 blog posts is worth it. And maybe the better option is to write 1 blog post, that's as much work as 3 separate different blog posts. So yeah, I'm not talking about 3 topics. This is still 1 topic. But the idea is that maybe my effort is better suited for something that is less frequent, because I know that that's going to have a higher quality. So that's where I'm getting at with that.
Okay, then I'm going to ask this. What was the most powerful keywords that you managed to create at Stay Alfred, and how is the journey of the development within that keyword?
Yeah, so the phrase that we really elevated was vacation rentals, and not just broad vacation rentals. We had locations all across the U.S. and big cities. So we would be targeting terms like Seattle vacation rentals, San Diego vacation rentals, and that was really what we built a lot of the business off of, was the city, the locality modifier plus vacation rentals. And as we grew, we broadened that out into certain markets. So it was interesting because there's a lot of different semantics that are part of that whole umbrella of vacation rentals. So we found some cities, searchers would refer to what we would call a vacation rental as a condo. But you go to another market and a condo is somewhere where you live. That's like your house. But in another market, a condo is like, hey, I'm going there for the weekend or for the summer. So that was interesting. And as you do keyword research, you might find that users sometimes will use different terms to mean the same thing. And actually, when you think about language in general, there's a quote a friend of mine says. He says, what is it? Words don't have meaning. Meaning has words. And that's true. It's true, because words are symbols to understand a concept. So you might say potato, I say potato, you say vacation rental, I say summer condo. And so understanding
Oh,
how people use terms in different scenarios is another one of those things, especially if you can find a niche. If you can say, hey, all my competition is using this term, but a lot of the customer base is actually also using this term that nobody's like taking advantage of. And that's often called the long tail keyword,
okay. Aldo, on that one, I totally resonated with that. Actually, I recalled something that we did at Airbnb, where they were looking for what specific language people in different markets were going to. They specifically came to each of the market managers in each country, and they asked what word do people look for when they look for something like an Airbnb, right? And I realized there was such a diversity of things to sort of connotate accommodation. And yes, that thing that you just said, that meaning has words, just like it totally opened up
Yeah.
that light bulb in my mind. I have a funny question. What's going to happen to all the work that you've done at Stay Alfred now? Like all these blog posts,
Yeah,
like
I know it's really sad. It's hard to see like 4 years of your life. Yeah, and and it's not just mine. There's a lot of people that put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that business.
wow.
In different disciplines. So it's tough, but
There's no way.
I use all that experience with with everything that comes after. So right now I'm helping out a company here locally that's in the security line of business. Like I mentioned, I have clients also all across the U.S. I've in the past had them in the world. So yeah, it stinks when you see kind of what happened, but at the same time, like I'm always learning. Like I'm always building my skill set, and I mean, who knows if everyone that we're talking, all of us right now will be in the same place in 10 years. I mean,
I don't know.
maybe the company will grow and explode and you guys will be lifelong workers. But the reality is, like, you might spend a couple years doing a stint here, learning a lot and taking that on to your next adventure, or, you might be there for a while. Nevertheless, it's always the idea of continuing to learn, and investing in yourself, and then rolling that into whatever endeavor you're working with, whether it's a company you're working with, whether it's, any other projects. So that's kind of my philosophy. It's bittersweet. So
There's no way to salvage any of that. There's like.
well, there is. I mean, I have salvaged it. So not only the stuff I'm sharing with you guys, I've created a whole training that I put out to the public, which was all based off of internal, like a lot of the stuff I'm telling you now is stuff that I developed training and processes at Stay Alfred, which I've since been able to roll out to training that I've offered to other people. Like, here's what we did at this company. Here's how you can do something similar. So, and I guess that's my point. It's not all a loss. Like, yeah, the content is probably just going to be, ended up on Internet Archive, but the lessons are there forever, whether it's me or other employees. Like, and that's the beauty of a startup. Like, I don't know how old Aldo or Riza is, but you guys, like, I don't, take advantage of this time. I got my start in a startup that's probably about the same size as your guys' company, if not smaller. It was my first job out of college. It was for a software development company. And gosh, man, I always tell people, I was like, it was the most difficult, like, year and a half of my life, but it was the best experience, and I'd never trade it for anything else. Because it, and so take advantage of working in a startup, because yeah, it's a lot of work and you're going to have to wear a lot of hats, but the amount of learning that you'll get out of it is going to far surpass probably just about any college, university.
Thank you for that. Hey guys, think about putting that on your LinkedIn later, yeah?
Yeah. I think it's nice quote, sir.
Okay, back to Aldo, yeah.
Okay. I'm asking about time. When do you think is how long do you think is the best ideal time for building this keyword empire, like from scratches to the top page? And
Um, from like a big picture, or is that what you're
yeah,
saying? Like how long should you expect before you start seeing results from a company wide perspective? I would give it 24 months, honestly. Like that's a lot. I mean, it's especially, obviously it sounds like Gene gets it, but like a lot of business owners, you know, especially for SEO, it's like, oh yeah, you're going to pay me for 12 to 24 months and you probably won't see results for at least a year. Like that's a hard, and that's the biggest challenge when it comes to SEO, especially if you're working primarily with clients, is saying like, look, we're here for the long haul and you probably won't see results for 12 months. But if you stick around, like I'm going to be your best friend. And, um, I if you really do your homework and know what you're doing, that's the case. It takes a long time, but when you get there, when you get to that year to 2 year mark, it pays off. And I have other case studies too. I've worked with a client. They're a small distributor of alcoholic beverages, kind of in a little bit of a niche within that space. But when we started, they were really not that well known, at least online. And now most of their income's coming online. The return on investment that we've been able to bring to them is 800+%. So content and SEO, it works. It's one of the lowest cost, lowest channels for attribution or leads, but it takes a while.
Totally understand.
Still there? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, so how long do you think like one keyword from zero to the first page, like how long the best ideal time to create it to manage it to the first rank, and how do you think from how long do you think like it will be effective, like sitting there?
Yeah, and that's a little harder answer because I've seen stuff rank in 2 months or quicker. We have one client now, and they're in a little bit of a niche, but we've been able to get them to rank in on the first page in about 30 days.
Wow.
Yeah, and again, they're not super competitive. Like they're in kind of a niche space. And then we've had other clients that have, it takes almost up to like a year to get some good rankings. Obviously, the more content that you create, the more opportunities you have to rank. And the other thing to keep in mind is one page can rank for many terms. So even though your primary term is maybe X, you can also rank for Y and Z and all this other stuff. So there's even sometimes where we have a situation now where we have a client that created a bunch of content, and one of the pages that they have is ranking for a term that they really wanted the other page to rank for, just because Google decided like, no, we want this page to rank for that term. And so we're trying to like pivot that a little bit, reorient some of the content. That's sometimes called keyword cannibalization, where you get two pages that are competing for the same term. And that's the other thing to keep in mind is, so in a perfect scenario, every page should have its own primary keyword. And the reason that that's important is if you write for the same term across different pieces of content, Google has to make the decision like, hey, which one are we going to rank? And the other one we're probably going to bury. So it's good for every page to say, okay, this is my primary focus, and then the next page is the next focus, But at the end of the day, you can have one page that ranks for many terms.
Yeah.
We see that all the time. So,
talking about this mistake, what are common beginner mistakes you have noticed in doing this SEO work, sir?
probably the biggest, which I've already really touched on, is not doing research. Just kind of going in and going to work without doing the research. I would say keyword research is important. It's one of the very first things you should ever do. So that's important. I see a lot of mistakes with just how businesses set up their websites, their architecture. Unfortunately, there's a lot of really talented developers out there that just don't understand how to build a website for SEO. So we see that all the time, and it's unfortunate because we get a lot of business from clients who are like, hey, I dropped 10 grand on this website and it's beautiful and it does everything I need it to do, but it's invisible. And it's like, well, yeah, that's because, the code is bloated. The site doesn't load quickly. It's got way too much JavaScript. It's not optimized. And so we have to end up doing a lot of like fix-it projects. And so that's another mistake we see is, just building an infrastructure that doesn't have that optimization in mind. And some of that can even go into design too. So like, even if you're going purely off of like paid ads, you want to have a design that's going to encourage people to convert to a particular funnel. So when people get to your site, like you should be helping them, instructing them like what to do next, whether it's like download our ebook or talk to one of our representatives or look at our locations, or you have the ability to set the tone for what your customer does, and sometimes that gets missed in the details when people are designing their websites.
Okay, Mas Rizal?
Yeah, may I ask some question? Talking about data previously. So right now, I'm working on Facebook ads, and that we want to acquire property owners, but currently our team is difficult to define KPIs or metrics. So, do you have any advice to define the standard number to make us have a standard number that we can make a better iteration next action? And also, yeah.
So I'll caveat that I'm not personally like a social media expert, but I work with a lot and I know enough to be dangerous. But
That's a good part.
But it seems like what most of the people that are focusing mostly on social media now, these are paid or organic or a little bit of both when it comes to social.
It's kind of paid ads.
Paid, okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, I guess, paid specifically, I guess the golden egg is really like leads. So are you driving any of those to any like lead sources? Are you driving them to your website? Like, do you have any metrics that say, hey, we spent this much on ads and here's how many leads we generated based off of that? Like, that's where I'd want to get to. There's a couple of different ways to do that. If you're, one of the easiest is just to set a custom landing page. So like a squeeze page or a sales page that you're driving ads to. And then you can track that with like Google Analytics. You can set up goal tracking and track all of that. Do you guys, let me ask you, do you guys have I'm assuming you have an e-commerce engine on your back end or not? Like your website? Okay, so you're not out doing bookings directly. You're just having people call. Okay.
No, actually, we have a very radical strategy. All of our bookings happen on Airbnb, and even if it's on our website, we redirect it back to Airbnb. There's a reason for that, but if you would like to know, I'll tell you. But yeah, that's what we do.
Well, And so at that point, like I'm not sure. That's where you might run into challenges with attribution. And granted, I don't know enough about Airbnb's tracking systems to be an expert. Part of my job at Stay Alfred was to try to get as much business off those channels so that we weren't paying as much in fees, and we weren't beholden to the VRBOs and the Airbnb.
Yeah.
So I would be curious to figure out if they have any kind of analytics or attribution that tracks that stuff. Because in a perfect world, like let's say down the road, you have your own booking engine where people can book directly through your website. Mm-hmm. That becomes pretty easy to track because you can set up Google Analytics and it will show you like, hey, out of all of these people that booked or filled out a form, here's the channel they came through, whether it's organic or Facebook or what have you, and here's the revenue. In a scenario where like a B2B business, you can somewhat simulate that, where you can put basically the cost that you're willing to attribute to a lead. So I'm willing to pay $10 per lead. So that way you know if you're winning or losing. Mm-hmm. And it does become important because if you don't have like a good data integrity and you're not able to track that stuff, then you don't know if you're winning or losing, especially if you're spending money on stuff like that. So,
Adam, just to give a little bit more context for what Rizal is doing. So we're actually using Facebook ads to acquire property partnerships. So like the actual supply, and I think I mentioned to Rizal one time, actually a few months ago. I think maybe not even a few months ago, a few days ago, that if we do get an expert, what we're trying to actually understand is, so Rizal's getting all kinds of KPIs back from his work, right? He's seeing like essentially what the CPMs are, right? Like the cost for every 1,000 views, and he's seeing like what the cost per lead is. But right now we don't have a reference point. If that is that good or is that bad, right? If it's costing us like, let's say $16 to get 1,000 impressions, is that actually good or bad? And what we're hoping to understand is like from an industry perspective, are there any like benchmarks to say, hey, look, this is how you know you're doing good, and this is how you know you're way off. Like an SAT score, right? If I tell you like a 450 on my SAT, you would know you're probably not very good at math, right? But if I got 1,600, is there anything like that off the top of your head? Like, are there numbers like?
There are numbers out there. I mean, I don't have any off the top of my head, and they do vary based off of like almost every industry. Uh-huh. I bet if you did a little bit of research on Google, you could probably figure out a good standard.
Okay.
But I don't have anything off my head, just like what the target would be. I guess the only thing I would stress is the more data you can get, the better. And there are probably ways to bridge that gap. Like I know with those like OTA channels, after you do the booking, there's ways to communicate with the people there. And maybe I don't understand enough about your guys' business, but who's your main customer? Is it people that are actually wanting to come and visit? Like, tell me a little bit about that, and maybe I can be more educated on how I answer that.
Sure. Basically, the easiest way to explain our business is sort of, I realize Airbnb functions a little bit like SEO, but also a little bit like a social media network, which means that essentially, if it's social media, then you have well, actually, it's not even just social media, it's anything. It's a platform, it's an open platform. So what Bukit Vista is we're an influencer on the Airbnb platform. So we noticed I noticed that I looked at the data at Airbnb, and I noticed that in Bali, the top 4 hosts in Bali did something crazy. They did something like 40% of all the bookings in the entire market space. Yeah. So 4 people combined together got about 40% of all the bookings. And then it decayed exponentially, where I think the top 10 did something close to 55% of all the bookings. And then it was like exponential decay. And after that, about half of all the hosts never got a single booking. And then a quarter of the hosts had only 1 or 2 bookings a year. And when I looked at it and I analyzed it, I saw, when you look at it, it's fairly obvious, right? It's like, these half people who never got any bookings, they have terrible photos. They wrote their content really badly. And they priced it really high. It was literally like people who thought that they would like get a quick buck, right? They would just do minimal amount of effort, go in, price it.
So that's kind of what you guys are doing is you're helping businesses almost kind of like helping them learn how to represent themselves.
Airbnb SEO.
Okay, that makes sense.
Airbnb SEO.
So then, like, and I'm just trying to cite this. If I own I run a rental property in Bali, I come to you because I'm struggling. Like, how does that transaction happen? Like,
okay. So there's a few reasons why you would actually want to work with a company like us. Let's say first,
but not why. Like, how does it happen? Like, do I call you and say, "Hey, I'm struggling"? Like, how do you get paid? Like, what's the monetary thing there? And the reason there's a reason for me asking all this.
Okay.
So.
Absolutely, I'll be happy to share. So generally, we get paid through a commission. So we take a percentage of the booking fees, and for the most part, and this is related to a downstream question. Most of our partnerships we've been finding offline. So we go and we discover construction sites. And at the point where somebody is actually building a property is when they are in the most need for management. So we approach them, we ask them would they be interested. And generally they say yes, because they have no upfront costs at all to sign up with us, and they have infinite amount of gain. But yeah, we take a commission from the bookings. And
so in that sense, you almost do have some B2B like aspect, because you're not necessarily targeting the consumers of the vacation rental. You're targeting the ownership. That makes more sense.
Yeah. So on the Airbnb side,
so again, that's where you have to focus your content. Like now the message is like, that's your audience. So that's what your content has to be around, is like, put yourself in the person that's a struggling Bali vacation owner, or the person that says, gosh, I got this plot of land and I really would love to get on this gold mine.
You're so right. Yeah.
So in that case, I'd be putting together tutorials like how to start here's one, how to start a vacation property in Bali. Like that right there. I don't know, like there's people that are doing that, like how to start a vacation rental in Bali, and there's probably not a ton of competition. So you want to speak to that. You want to speak to that customer. But then back to the other part of this too is, what I would do is I would try to create like a landing page that has some kind of offer, like download our guide, like a step-by-step guide on the top 10 things you need before starting a vacation rental in Bali. Send traffic to that, and then you can start tracking. Say, hey, we spent X on ads, and here's how many leads we got from it. And then you start knowing the value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. That makes a lot of top 10. Okay, no, I get it. I just realized a lot of our blogs have always been written for guest side, but we don't even do any business on the guests on this website. So
so you're talking to the wrong audience, because it doesn't fit your model, and that happens a lot. That happens a lot too. Like people just, and so I would start shifting that around, because your customer is not the vacationer. Your customer is the vacation owner. So I would start working on everything from what to know. I would put together like a guide, like how to list your property on Airbnb,
Got it.
and make it Bali centric, or whatever your territory is. And so make sure you're speaking to your audience, and that's gonna be a big help there.
That's actually
also before we go to like after you stop the recording, I'm going to drop a link to actually a company there in Bali that has a vacation rental. It's a former client of mine. I'm still in contact with them,
Okay.
so
Sure.
might be able to help them out.
Okay. Great. Back to Aldo. I think we can probably conclude at this point, Aldo. Yeah.
I have this one last question. It's about about the expansion thing. So I noticed that Stay Alfred was doing expansion. We're talking with this guy called named Richard Fortin. He was responsible for expanding the Stay Alfred business to Europe. And from the talk that I get that the all the things that done in the area is managed by that local companies. And my question is, do you guys at the headquarters does really that done the work of digital marketing for that area, or you're just leaving them, and what kind of scope that you have with that local companies?
So if I understand, the question is like if we had any role in the digital marketing for like international, is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Not 100%, and the only reason being is we never actually got too far into any international markets. Now, I did start down that path, and ideally it would have been something we would have done internally. We did have one acquisition, and so I did a lot of upfront research on that business because they were kind of they kind of presented their intellectual web property as being more valuable than it was, or at least, when you're doing negotiations, people say, "Oh, I want you to pay this much." You say, "Well, I only want to pay this much." So I worked on that front to say, well, you're what you have is okay, but here's why it's not worth what you're asking. But yeah, unfortunately the business didn't fruition so far into outside of the U.S. that we were able to do a lot. But ideally, we probably would have. So,
Okay.
and it's also important to know, like, some regions the games are quite different. Like a number of years ago, I was doing stuff in Asia, particularly China, and marketing in China is, it's like throw out everything and start over. Like, because Google doesn't even really exist in China. It's all Baidu.
Right.
And the rules are completely different. And so that's one of those exceptions. Generally Google has a pretty good presence across most of the world, but I'm curious, in Bali, like, who are the main search engine players? Is it Google? Are there any others that maybe people in the West wouldn't know as much?
It's really Google, sir.
Mostly Google?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you go to some regions, like China's a big case, and like I think Google's like, I don't know anymore, but when I was there, like they were probably number 4 in the search engines. Like nobody used Google unless you lived in Hong Kong. But yeah, usually in the territories where Google is still the predominant, there are geographic differences, and you can typically play by most of the same rules, but there's minutia in every market that you want to look at. So
Okay, I think that's all of the questions that I have. Okay, back to you.
awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Any other questions?
let's go maybe to Rizal. Rizal, any final thoughts?
All good for me, sir.
Okay. All right. Sounds
Awesome.
good. Okay. Well, we'll end the recording at this point, and I'd like to say thank you very much, Adam, for being one of the early pioneers in our guest speaker series.
Sure.
For
Yeah.
Bukit Vista, and thank you so much for sharing. I'll stop the recording.